Thank you, Michael, for those words and that update. And I'm going to jump right into the on-call consulting and what does this mean. Y'all have all heard this before, but it's worth reviewing. We do this process on a 2-year basis. We're legislated to do that. The authorization is described under a rule in North Carolina General Statutes and Administrative Code. And in general, the firms that are selected are authorized to do up to $700,000 worth of work over that 2-year period. Any individual contract has a limit of $350,000. And if it's a design and construction project, the total project cap for design and construction services is $1.5 million. These are classified as minor projects under the state system. If you were to exceed $1.5 million in total services, we'd have to go through the request for services process. And I think I've seen every one of y'all at least once in one of those interviews. You know how long that process takes, 3, 4, 5 months to go through it to get selection and finally get the scope. So the on-call serves us well. We get a lot of work under contract real quickly. It's not as fast as we'd like it to be, but it works. Here's a brief overview of what we've done with our on-call consulting services since 2002. You can see that we started out with 15 firms back in 2002, and we slowly ramped up with a peak of 31 firms in 2006, and now we are slowly trimming that down. We're up to 12 firms in this particular on-call. So $700,000 per firm, that projects out to the total authorization amounts, which is in that column there. This year we have $8.4 million worth of total authorization. And you can see the total number of contracts as well as the dollars contract. We've done a lot of work. Almost $42 million worth of contracted services and 288 contracts since 2002. That's good. That's real good. How does that relate to construction? This is broken out by fiscal year, but the totals are 91 construction projects since July 2005, almost $30 million for the construction work. That's all mitigation. I don't have the SMUs, WMUs, and all that. We'll have to talk to Jim Stanford about that. Just some reminders that if you do any services without an executed contract, it is at your firm's risk. There's no guarantees, particularly in this light of government contraction and people, positions not being filled, people being laid off, contracts can get hung up, budgets can get cut. So we're not immune to that. This is true for contracts, amendments, and time extensions. If you're aware of your contract expiring, I'm hoping the project managers are notifying you of those expiration dates. You need to get your time extension request in, because if that contract expires, it is a very difficult process to reactivate. And you can't invoice for any work past that expiration date. So be aware of it. Go back and check all your records. If you don't know your contract expiration dates, get on the horn with your project manager and let's find out. Okay? With respect to the scope and fee and the contract, the whole team that's going to be working on the project needs to be aware of that scope and fee. What the construction management hours are, for example, what the construction budget is, for example, that we're designing to that budget that was defined. If the budget's inadequate, we need to talk. We can adjust budgets if necessary, but we don't want to go in at construction documents submittal stage and having construction budgets exceeding, or estimates exceeding those construction budgets. All this information is included in that contract paperwork prior to your firm's signature. So everybody's aware of this when we're going to contract, at least the person that's signing for your firm. Real quickly, the scope. Be sure that the narrative describes the steps involved in the project development, like Michael just touched on. Do not put assumptions in that scope of work. Exclusions are great. Some particular tasks specifically excluded, that's good. Assumptions, that's just a gray area we don't need in the contract. Be sure to list all the deliverables to be provided, the major deliverables to be provided. And the delivery date is based on the weeks from contract execution. And then, and lastly, the fee must be in whole dollar amounts. I don't make this rule. Do not have pennies on the end of your contract amount. It'll get rejected by state construction, and we got to go right back and get it rounded out and on paperwork right. Be sure to display the subtotals for each task within the scope, and you must itemize those direct expenses for each subtask. Just some basics. I want y'all to be aware of what it takes to get a contract through the system. On the left column, we've got consulting contracts, which fall under the on-call. On the right is a construction contract. Not all of you will be involved in those, but it helps to understand. First step is a POC authorization. What that means is we have a project oversight committee that authorizes us to go to contract with a particular job. Then the firm is assigned, and then there's the scoping meeting, whenever that takes place, and then we get into the negotiation. As we all know, negotiations can be quick, they can be long. It's just specific to the project. After that, once we've zeroed in on the fee, I have to do an administrative action called a request for exception. Basically, I have to request from all the agencies that are going to sign the contract the permission to go to contract. It takes, Jeff, how long does that process take?
The good thing about that,
What does the process take currently?
currently it's on.
It's gonna,
Yeah, just real quick, I don't know if all y'all know what request for exception is, but something that came out that basically said we had to go to the Secretary's office to get approved to go to contract. We have worked that out now in the Secretary's office that we are exempt. We have to do one per year. So we do it per fiscal year. We don't have to run through, so that will take us about 10 days. It usually takes about 10 days to go through that system. We just cut that out.
when that happens? Just haven't done any contracts. After that, I submit the formal paperwork for requesting the contract. That has to go through the chain. It goes through major players are our office. Bill has to sign off on that. Then it goes to an agency called Division of Purchase and Services. They have to set up all the accounting stuff. And then it has to go to the state construction office. They have to approve it, set up their project numbers. And then at some point, contract paperwork goes out to the firm for signature. Then it has to come back through all those same parties. Finally, we get the state to sign that contract, and y'all can start work. That signed contract is that what we're talking about. Make sure you have an executed contract before you start work. Construction contracts follow a very similar process, but of course it's a bid process. So you got to have an announcement, a pre-bid meeting, bid opening, go through the award approval process. I'm not even going to attempt to put weeks or months on any of these particular steps because it's so inconsistent. Some changes for this authorization period, real quickly. We are no longer going to scope post-construction monitoring services on design contracts. Designer services will end at the conclusion of construction once the final report and record drawing has been submitted, the project's been accepted. We will contract post-construction monitoring services under separate, it's called letter agreement. Most of you that have done monitoring services have seen these letter agreements. They're a one-page contract, and then they have the scope and fee attached on the back. In most cases, we will retain the designer for those post-construction monitoring services. The plan is to start scoping those services somewhere between the land quality permit and when we go to bid for the construction job. So we don't want to do like we did years ago where we scoped folks 2, 3, 4 years out for the project with construction. Inevitably, things get delayed and things just slip. So we want to be as fair as possible, get you on the contract when we know for sure those monitoring services are going to be needed. And those contracts will include baseline monitoring services, the years 1 through 5, and possibly